What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We've only been off air for about 4 minutes, but this is an interview I have been very much looking forward to for, I guess it's been like a week now almost. Tony Dunst, you're looking extremely like sassy over here. You've got a
Sassy.
tan, you've got
Yeah.
this smile. I'm like, what? This is like a Tinder profile pic. What's going on?
No, I'm just relaxing in my backyard. I got some, I got some sun this morning. I've been playing a lot of tennis out in the desert heat lately. With the pandemic, you try and find things that you can do, but very safely, and tennis fits that criteria perfectly. I grew up playing, and I always thought like, if there's ever a period in my life where I've got a lot of time on my hands, I should get back into tennis. Like I should dedicate myself. And yeah, the last few months have been it.
Wow. Okay, so you're one of the people who's actually doing that. I was just having a conversation with someone
Yeah.
who was saying, "Man, I really thought if I ever had time in my life, this is what I was
Hmm.
gonna do." But it turns out what I was gonna do was just like binge watch shows or whatever. I have to. It's
Right.
not me. I haven't been like doing that either. But I want to say kudos to people who are fully enjoying this free time.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'm the worst. I'm one of those people who gets like, boxed into a corner and then it's like, oh, we'll make the most of the situation,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but that's always been my mindset to try and be very adaptable. I actually think that's one of those things that tournament poker teaches you because you'll be going along great for like hours and then some horrible misfortune will happen and you really have to be able to sort of steady your mind and be like, okay, well, this is my situation now. I need to make the best of it. I'm still in this, attempting to win or maximize the value of my chips. Like, let's just get it.
Yeah. That's really true. That is really true. And
Hmm.
it's interesting, even my husband, coming from a professional fighting background, told
Yeah.
me that one of the best lessons that he learned in playing poker was about learning to just never be mad, right? Never get mad at a situation.
Mm.
Always learn to just
Yeah.
keep your head down, keep it chill. That he was able to utilize that in poker better maybe than in fighting, but it is key and essential in almost everything in life, I think. There are so many of those things in poker that are lessons I think that could transition to life. That goes into Maria Konikova's book though, and a whole
I was
nother
just gonna
thing.
say, I'm really looking forward to reading her book because I've been just kind of like mashing poker into my face over the last like 2 months and everything since she's come out with it. But not only is Maria like a great voice in our game, but it really sounds like a lot of the book discusses her takeaways in life from the game of poker.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm very. That's one of the like top of my list things to do when the series is over. I'm just gonna relax for a while in about a week, and checking out her book is gonna be really cool.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, of course, poker and the series. I want to get into your second bracelet. Clearly, a huge
Mhm.
congratulations, Ob.
Thank you.
But I want to talk a little first of all because of course, without COVID, this has put a sort of shift in what's going down with the WPT. I was actually just talking to Roberto Romanello, and I know there's the Party
Mhm.
Poker WPT online championships, which I also want to talk about. But for you, your job, your life, your plans, can you talk a little bit about sort of what your expectations were for the last, 3 or 4 months and sort of what it has looked like instead?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of travel lined up that, of course, was canceled. Much of it being for live poker and with the World Poker Tour, but of course, live poker is sidelined in the United States for the foreseeable future. And so, I have switched to the online focus, certainly. But yeah, best laid plans. There were weddings, there was trips, there was things I had been looking forward to for months. But that's the story with everybody. And I kind of think, in a way, the poker world is very lucky in that we still get to basically go to work every day and maintain what drives us and gives us purpose, and that the game is it's still there for us. We can still compete for it. It's in a different avenue, but it's still there. And a lot of people right now have watched, their business, their livelihood just kind of go up in smoke during all this. So like poker's lucky for the way things are right now.
That's so true. And I've really been, for the most part, so proud of the poker community as a whole for just adjusting, accepting, moving
Yeah.
forward in all these different ways, figuring out different ways to, communicate and share our sort of experiences and our stories. And I've actually been so surprised how fantastic this series has been, how many great stories have come out of it. And yeah, I just think I've been just surprised by how great something that could have been really terrible has been. And so you have sort of assumed the position, which I would say are some incredibly difficult shoes to fill, those of the one and only Mike Sexton.
Right.
I would say, though, you've done this extremely gracefully. And I think he also is someone who is balancing being what is sort of an ambassador, you know, a commentator, a person involved in content, and also still a poker player. So for you now, you know, in this position that you are in your life, how much is poker normally a part of your life in the traditional sense of you playing it versus talking about it?
Oh, it's a massive part, especially over the last couple of years. After I took Mike's position in the booth next to Vince, I thought to myself, like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. But if I'm going to be here all the time talking about the play of my peers and the people who will make our final tables, I really got to be able to walk the walk. Like, I really have to step up my knowledge and my ability to execute on the felt. And so over the last, and like, couple of years ago, I looked at my results on Hendon Mob, and I was like, man, I'm going to be washed up if I'm not careful. Like, last couple of years have sucked. It's not like I had been putting in a lot of time in study prior to that, working on my game. I could tell talking poker with some of my peers that I was considerably behind. So I rededicated myself and found that there is a lot to learn about poker because of how much the new tools that we have in the game, particularly, you know, solvers, pile solver, things like that, have discovered about poker strategy. So, you know, there's always layers to peel back. And what Mike did such an awesome job of over the years was being, you know, like very accessible and approachable. It was just, he was part of the fabric of the poker community. If you showed up to a WPT or a party event, he was going to be there. He talked, like, the first time I ever showed up to a live poker event was almost 20 years ago. And Mike was there and very patiently listened to my bad beat story. And like, you don't really think about what it is to be an ambassador at the time, but a lot of it is like being present with people, just like listening to them, hanging out, talking poker. It's these little things that really just kind of like add up over the years in your time as an ambassador. And that's what Mike was so awesome at. And you know, beyond being able to blend genuinely being a competitive poker player and somebody who like talks about the game with a passion, just kind of being around, being accessible was a big thing to me too.
I couldn't agree more. And I think in so many ways, these small little moments, I always say, this is what I said on the podcast last week. My father-in-law came to the World Series of Poker one year, and I was able to introduce him to Mike Sexton. And that was a huge moment for him. He was so generous with his time, and it gave me big points with the family. And that was 100% what he's always done really well. And in fact, they just named it is now, let me pull it up, the World Poker Tour Champions Cup is now going to be named in honor of commentator and WPT Champions Club member Mike Sexton. So tell me a little bit about this. Were you in on this kind of decision? Obviously, it makes all the sense in the world.
No, I wasn't in on the decision, but as you said, as soon as I heard about it, I was like, yeah, of course it is. Like, it's the Lombardi Trophy, it's the O'Brien Trophy, it's the Mike Sexton Champions Cup. It is the original, like, great ambassador of your game, the person who put your game on the map in the public's eye to the poker world. I really think that has sort of always been Mike Sexton, or certainly over the last 20 years it has been. And I think it is just a perfect marriage of making his name a more permanent part of the game the way his presence was.
I think that's very well put. Very well put. Well, before we get into talking about your second bracelet, which I'm very excited to talk about, let's talk a little bit about the Party Poker WPT Online Championships event. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the whole world is moving online. Obviously, all these events are, I think, getting incredible numbers and providing a place for people to make a living, who do this for a living. But let's talk a little bit about sort of some of the things that differentiate this event from this sort of melange of events we're experiencing in the next few months, in the last few months.
Well, I would say the two really big differentiating factors are A, that you can win a WPT title, and there are going to be 5 WPT titles awarded that will then give you access, and in this case, an entry into our season ending 15K Tournament of Champions, which remains one of the only tournaments on the calendar that is a real value add from a poker company back to its players. There's generally about $150,000 to $200,000 in added money and prizes in that tournament. It is only eligible to WPT champions, and so 5 of the players during the World Online Championships are going to be permanent WPT champions and have access to that tournament. And then the other thing is, of course, the guarantees. I mean, Party has been very generous with their guarantees. They're running a ton of satellites to these events that at times are going to overlay to make sure that they hit these guarantees. And that has not been the case for every major online series, and yet it's something we've grown to expect from Party Poker.
Yeah, that's something actually, just speaking to Roberto, he was sort of gently hinting at like, hey guys, these are great guarantees and they're probably not going to all get met, which is really, really, I mean, that's where in poker, obviously, right? That's where we're hoping to find those little bits of value wherever you can
That's right.
scoop them up. Well, let's talk a little bit about your second bracelet. It's so difficult to get a bracelet. I think for most players, that's the goal. To get 2 bracelets is a much, much smaller group. But for you, I have to imagine that this was a completely different experience. How would you even compare the two?
Strangely enough, from a meaning standpoint, a significance standpoint, this one means more to me because I came up online. To me, online poker is like, it's like the gold standard of like, if you're gonna cut it at the height of poker, you have to be able to beat the best at online poker. That's where it's like really played out, as big as the live arena is. And while I know there's a little more prestige and history attached to live events, to me, the top of the game is being played online, and I grew up in the culture of online poker, and so getting a big win there was like super meaningful for me. And I actually just like didn't really have any big results online. I had sort of made a steady living over the years when online poker was accessible, but never really had any like big exciting results. Never had a 6-figure score or even something like approaching that prior to this series. And then to hit one out of the park like that, of that magnitude, I mean, hell, like I just, it's kind of just sort of blew me away. Like the field sizes and the prize pools for online poker blew me away. And I feel very, very appreciative and happy that after 15, 20 years of playing online, I got that like huge score that always felt like it was kind of missing from the resume.
Well, I have to imagine too, you mentioned, sort of recognizing that if you're going to be speaking about poker, you really need to be in the trenches, as it were, in the mix. And that
right
at this particular time in your life, then to have come into such a big, position in your broadcasting career, and then to also then follow that up by capturing a bracelet in the online space, I have to imagine that it must feel a bit like you're sort of at the top of your game in both fields, in both spheres. What are you sort of then working towards, or now it's like, okay, boxes checked, on to tennis?
right that it kind of is. I was sort of like, all right, great, but I would love to win another WPT title. I got pretty close last year. I got runner up against Ola Shimian in our Tournament of Champions, and getting that close made me realize like how bad I wanted to take down another one of those. So from a poker accolade standpoint, that plus we kind of have this old school concept of winning a triple crown. Like, did you win, a WPT title, a World Series bracelet, and another major title? For a long time, it was EPT, but I think if you've been to like an Aussie Millions or something like that, it would definitely qualify. And I've come close, but haven't done it, and that would be
I was
really
just gonna
cool
say, I'm pretty
accolade
sure
to get.
I remember like a runner-up Aussie Millions, was it?
Right. And that's just it. Like, so, just so close. So from a poker standpoint, those would be really fun accolades to shoot for. And then from more of a life standpoint, yeah, I would love to work on my tennis a lot. And that would be the next challenge. My Spanish as well. Like I speak terrible Spanish. I mean, saying I speak Spanish at all is kind of ambitious. So working on it to a point where I was approaching bilingual would be really cool from a life goal standpoint. So yeah, those are a couple of things.
Yeah, only moderately ambitious things. I actually would say you've pretty much got that going. And I wanted to ask you because I remember we did an interview back at the Aussie Millions where you took runner up, and this was like a totally bizarre situation to begin with.
Yes.
I want to say you had lost a 5K chip or something crazy happened, and then I had forgotten the story for the most part, but then I saw a tweet from you a week or so ago where it was saying what one of the most generous things you'd ever experienced in poker. Poker, I think, is a very underrated but extremely generous community. I would say, like, outside of the poker world, people do not realize how incredibly generous the poker community is. So I was reading through that thread just to see, you know, just to check out like what are things other people have seen. And you had a little story on there, but can you, for the viewers who may have never heard, give us the backstory of your Aussie Millions runner-up finish?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time, poker had been going really poorly for me, and I had a very negative mindset about the game. I had mostly been focusing on daily fantasy sports, and that's kind of where my passion was. So, and like every time I went and played poker, I lost. Like I think leading up to that Aussie Million score, that was January 2016. I'm pretty sure in the year 2015, I had like one live cash. I was just playing bad. I didn't want to be there. Wasn't enjoying it, but I was at the Aussie Millions. I have a lot of history there. Felt like I had to play. So I'm in line to register. And long story short, I end up dropping a $5,000 chip out of my pocket, being unable to find it. Security couldn't find it. And, you know, things weren't going great financially at that point. So, you know, torching 5K before you even sit down and then have to play like patient, steady, mindful poker for days, it's just not really the state of mind to be in. So I just left. I was like, fuck this. I just left and just went about my day. And Timex, Mike McDonald, had purchased 50% of me in the event up to that point. And he was reaching out to me. He was like, listen, you know, it's like one of the best events of the year. If you don't feel like risking anything at all, I can just put you in and you keep like, what was it, like 85 or 87% of your, or sorry, I would keep 85 or 87%. And it was basically extrapolating the markup he had paid to a point where I was free rolling in the event. He was like, you know, just so you know, that's an option. And I was like, yeah, I'll think about it. And it kind of went about my day. And now it's like 9 hours later and I'm a little bored and a little intoxicated. And, and I texted him, I'm like, yo, is that offer still good? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, cool, I'm going to lose your money. And so I show up, you know, I play a little bit of poker, win some hands, you know, show up the next day. I two out somebody in a huge pot. Now I got a bunch of chips. And by like day 2, day 3, mentally, you're in a very different place. You're settled in. You're thinking like, yeah, I might only have, 15% of myself in this thing, but 15% of 1.6 million Australian is still a lot of money. So keep going. I make the final table second in chips. And Timex said, well, look, you know, like you really appreciate your work in this. I'm just going to give you 2% of yourself. Like, I know how this all played out for you. This sucks. Appreciate your work. Here's 2% of yourself at the final table. You know, good luck. And that 2% ended up being worth about $15,000 US. He just gave to me, and he didn't have to do that. There was no pressure on him. Timex. It's weird. He is somebody who has a reputation as, you know, kind of a tough businessman, a guy who's quote unquote always looking for an edge. And I think that we should distinguish between people who look for an edge because it's good gambling, because it's good business sense, and people who always look for an edge and the ends justifies the means, in the sense that they will try and take advantage of you. They will try and push you into a bet that you should not take. They will try and like, you know, squeeze every drop of a like little rule nittery out of you. And that's just not Mike at all. And so I was happy that I could bring up a story that I think created some contrast from the way that I see him talked about at times.
I couldn't agree more. And I actually think that's so interesting because that's one of the sort of baselines with which people judge the poker community is, oh, these are people who are always looking to, you know, edge you out or, figure out angles or whatever it is, when in reality it's just the way to make money as a professional poker player is to generally make an intellectually intelligent choice, right?
Yeah, you know, how to not make losing bets is something you end up being trained in the gambling and poker world, and I think was something really stressed amongst the online generation, because we were using tools where it's like, okay, you play hands and then we put it in Poker Tracker and we put it in all these tools, and then we find out definitively whether that was a winning or a losing investment. Yeah. And then we need to create winning investment habits. I see those personality traits very present in poker players, but this sort of lingering reputation for being like shady people always looking for an angle has not been my experience in the poker world at all. And to be honest with you, I am probably less suspicious of your average poker player than I am of someone in almost any other industry. That's me.
Completely agree. Martin Seamus wrote a book, I want to say 2 to 3 years ago, who Martin Harris is actually his name. Seamus is his nickname. But sort of going through the history of poker, especially in like popular culture, and just sort of showcasing how in most cases it's the media which has really shaped and defined this idea of, he went like back through old magazines, old newspapers, different movies, and just more often than not, I mean almost 100% of the time, it's sort of created this idea when the reality, couldn't be farther from it. And I agree, because it is an industry that so much has to police itself, these people are generally people of incredible moral standards and great integrity, because that's the only way to really, I think, exist and survive in this game. And I'm going to let you go. My daughter's already losing her mind. I can hear her just like partying in there. But I want to ask you one more question. You mentioned that you were playing a lot of DFS during this time when you were at the Aussie Millions. Is that something that's still a big part of your life?
I approach daily fantasy sports from a recreational standpoint now. I think back then there was a surge in popularity in new players coming to the games and sites giving away promotions or putting on events that had overlay, plus everyone was new. So there was sort of a gold rush era. But if you look at the rake in most daily fantasy sports contests, it is very significant, often about double what you would encounter in a poker tournament. And so for most players, I think that makes DFS a losing proposition, or at best a neutral proposition. And unless you are amongst the very best, it's not something I would approach from a hoping to make money standpoint. So there was that period where I was able to, but I doubt, even if I really committed myself, that I would make any kind of significant money at DFS anymore. Now I just kind of play for fun. If I think a tournament, great. I think it's an awesome, fun gambling product. But it's just me punting, so I have something to enjoy while I play poker now.
And the poker seems to be going very well for you anyways, so who needs any more of that? Keep up with, we need the Spanish, the tennis, we've already got plenty of ambitious goals, and the poker is going so well for you. Well, I hope the live poker scene again too, of course, takes off so that we can see you ship maybe an Aussie Millions or maybe one of these Party Poker Lives, an EPT, whatever it is. Let's get that Triple Crown going. You've got to keep these lofty poker goals, obviously, but I so appreciate you taking the time, Tony. I know you've got more bracelets to win, but I just appreciate it. And anything you want to leave the audience with, any like pearls of wisdom?
I want to give a shout out to Learn WPT, where I make content, where our head content creator, Nick Bigger, just won a bracelet himself the other day. So big congrats to him. We got Lucky Chewy and Vanessa Selps on there. Wow. And so I am going to create some training. I've created a ton of trading videos on there, but I'm also going to turn the hand histories from these events into training videos there in the very near future. So if you're interested, check it out at learnwpt.com/Tony. And you can learn from both, what I've been working on lately, plus all those great names I just mentioned.
I just love those hand histories. I've done a million of them in terms of, creating content and asking players to break down hands for me. And it's just always some of the most interesting stuff for players such as myself or people who are terrible. Just listening to what someone is thinking in a hand and understanding why they're making these decisions, I think is some of the absolute best content for helping you to understand how to approach your game. So watch out, you might find me on there just rewatching your vids. Thank you so much, and thank you guys all for joining us. Sorry for anyone we didn't get to talk to, but thank you, and thank you so much for the congrats on the baby, and by the way, on the bracelet. Deuces, everybody.